as that of Apollo Sandaliaris, Jupiter Targoides, and others. When his house on the Palatine Hill was accidentally destroyed by fire, the veteran soldiers, the judges, the tribes, and even the people individually contributed, according to the ability of each, for rebuilding it. But he would accept only of some small portion out of the several sums collected, and refused to take from any one person more than a single denarius. Upon his return home from any of the provinces, they attended him not only with joyful acclamations, but with songs. It is also remarked that as often as he entered the city, the infliction of punishment was suspended for the time. The whole body of the people, upon a sudden impulse and with unanimous consent, offered him the title of Father of his country. It was announced to him first at Antium by a deputation from the people, and, upon his declining the honor, they repeated their offer on his return to Rome, in a full theatre, when they were crowned with laurel. The Senate soon afterwards adopted the proposal, not in the way of acclamation or decree, but by commissioning Messala, in an unanimous vote, to compliment him with it in the following terms: "With hearty wishes for the happiness and prosperity of yourself and your family, Caesar Augustus, for we think we thus most effectually pray for the lasting welfare of the state, the Senate, in agreement with the Roman people, salute you by the title of Father of your country." To this compliment Augustus replied, with tears in his eyes, in these words, for I give them exactly as I have done those of Messala: "Having now arrived at the summit of my wishes, O conscript fathers, what else have I to beg of the immortal gods but the continuance of this, your affection for me, to the last moments of my life?" To the physician Antonius Musa, who had cured him of a dangerous illness, they erected a statue near that of Aesculapius, by a general subscription. Some heads of families ordered in their wills that their heirs should lead victims to the Capitol, with a tablet carried before them, and pay their vows, because Augustus still survived. Some Italian cities appointed the day upon which he first visited them to be thenceforth the beginning of their year. And most of the provinces, besides erecting temples and altars, instituted games to be celebrated to his honor in most towns every 5 years. The kings, his friends and allies, built cities in their respective kingdoms, to which they gave the name of Caesarea, and all with one consent resolved to finish, at their common expense, the temple of Jupiter Olympius at Athens, which had been begun long before, and consecrated to his genius. They frequently also left their kingdoms, laid aside the badges of royalty, and, assuming the toga, attended and paid their respects to him daily, in the manner of clients to their patrons, not only at Rome, but when he was travelling through the provinces. Having thus given an account of the manner in which he filled his public offices both civil and military, and his conduct in the government of the empire both in peace and war, I shall now describe his private and domestic life, his habits at home and among his friends and dependents, and the fortune attending him in those scenes of retirement from his youth to the day of his death. He lost his mother in his first consulship, and his sister Octavia when he was in the 54th year of his age. He behaved towards them both with the utmost kindness whilst living, and after their decease paid the highest honours to their memory. He was contracted when very young to the daughter of Publius Servilius Isauricus, but upon his reconciliation with Antony after their first rupture, the armies on both sides insisting on a family alliance between them, he married Antony's stepdaughter Claudia, the daughter of Fulvia by Publius Claudius, although at that time she was scarcely marriageable. And upon a difference arising with his mother-in-law Fulvia, he divorced her untouched and a pure virgin. Soon afterwards he took to wife Scribonia, who had before been twice married to men of consular rank, and was a mother by one of them. With her likewise he parted, being quite tired out, as he himself writes, with the perverseness of her temper, and immediately took Livia Drusilla, though then pregnant, from her husband Tiberius Nero, and she had never any rival in his love and esteem. By Scribonia he had a daughter named Julia, but no children by Livia, although extremely desirous of issue. She, indeed, conceived once, but miscarried. He gave his daughter Julia in the first instance to Marcellus, his sister's son, who had just completed his minority, and after his death to Marcus Agrippa, having prevailed with his sister to yield her son-in-law to his wishes, for at that time Agrippa was married to one of the Marcellas, and had children by her. Agrippa dying also, he for a long time thought of several matches for Julia, and even the equestrian order, and at last resolved upon selecting Tiberius for his stepson. And he obliged him to part with his wife, at that time pregnant, and who had already brought him a child. Mark Antony writes, that he first contracted Julia to his son, and afterwards to Cotizo, king of the Getae, demanding at the same time the king's daughter in marriage for himself. He had 3 grandsons by Agrippa and Julia, namely Caius, Lucius, and Agrippa, and 2 granddaughters, Julia and Agrippina. Julia he married to Lucius Paulus, the censor's son, and Agrippina to Germanicus, his sister's grandson. Caius and Lucius he adopted at home, by the ceremony of purchase from their father, advanced them, while yet very young, to offices in the state, and when they were consuls elect, sent them to visit the provinces and armies. In bringing up his daughter and granddaughters, he accustomed them to domestic employments, and even spinning, and obliged them to speak and act everything openly before the family, that it might be put down in the diary. He so strictly prohibited them from all converse with strangers, that he once wrote a letter to Lucius Vinicius, a handsome young man of a good family, in which he told him, "You have not behaved very modestly in making a visit to my daughter at Baiae." He usually instructed his grandsons himself in reading, swimming, and other rudiments of knowledge, and he laboured nothing more than to perfect them in the imitation of his handwriting. He never supped but he had them sitting at the foot of his couch, nor even travelled but with them in a chariot before him, or riding beside him. But in the midst of all his joy and hopes in his numerous and well-regulated family, his fortune failed him. The 2 Julias, his daughter and granddaughter, abandoned themselves to such courses of lewdness and debauchery that he banished them both. Caius and Lucius he lost within the space of 18 months, the former dying in Lycia and the latter at Marseilles. His 3rd grandson Agrippa, with his stepson Tiberius, he adopted in the Forum, by a law passed for the purpose by the sections. But he soon afterwards discarded Agrippa for his coarse and unruly temper, and confined him at Surrentum. He bore the death of his relations with more patience than he did their disgrace, for he was not overwhelmed by the loss of Caius and Lucius, but in the case of his daughter he stated the facts to the Senate in a message read to them by the quaestor, not having the heart to be present himself. Indeed, he was so much ashamed of her infamous conduct that for some time he avoided all company, and had thoughts of putting her to death. It is certain that when one Phoebe, a freedwoman and confidant of hers, hanged herself about the same time, he said, "I had rather be the father of Phoebe than of Julia." In her banishment he would not allow her the use of wine, nor any luxury in dress, nor would he suffer her to be waited upon by any male servant, either freeman or slave, without his permission, and having received an exact account of his age, stature, complexion, and what marks or scars he had about him. At the end of 5 years he removed her from the island where she was confined to the continent, and treated her with less severity, but could never be prevailed upon to recall her. When the Roman people interposed on her behalf several times with much importunity, all the reply he gave was, "I wish you had all such daughters and wives as she is." He likewise forbade a child, of which his granddaughter Julia was delivered after sentence had passed against her, to be either owned as a relation or brought up. Agrippa, who was equally intractable and whose folly increased every day, he transported to an island, and placed a guard of soldiers about him, procuring at the same time an act of the Senate for his confinement there during life. Upon any mention of him and the 2 Julias, he would say